Today, good sir, is Tuesday, March 10th.
March the 10th,
2020.
2020.
Okay, and I'm sitting down with Charles Boatright from B&W Pipe. How long ago have we known each other, Charles?
Well, I think we started talking to each other regularly in 1984 when I moved to Seattle. And I think you worked for Edison Pipe?
That's right.
Yeah.
And so when you, at that time, I'm going to back you up and I'm going to ask you, because we'll get to 1984.
Sure.
But what year did you start in the steel pipe business?
I started, began working for L.B. Foster in about March of 1977. And I graduated from A&M. And, you know, I just knew I wanted a job where I got to wear a suit and work in a big building. As long as it didn't involve a shovel, you know, I was ready. And I went to work for them in the construction products group, selling sheet pile, bearing pile. And I worked in Houston for about 2 years, and they asked me if I wanted to be the manager in Dallas. And hell, who doesn't want to be the manager? So I moved to Dallas, and they needed somebody to sell rail in Dallas, railroad rails and accessories. That's where Foster got their start. So I took that business over and learned it and developed friendships, and it's a great business. And I think if you look at Foster today, that's where they make so much of their money, or have over the last couple of years.
Can I ask you, how did you hear about L.B. Foster?
Through an employment agency. And I went in there and I interviewed with this little bitty guy with nattily dressed, Gene Warren, very fastidious. And before I left that, you know, he interviewed somebody else that same day that had experience. But I said, Mr. Warren, let me tell you, if you'll hire me, I'll do whatever you say to do as fast as I can possibly do it with a yes, sir. Please, I need this job. And he called me the next day and said that I got the job because I had a nicer suit than the other guy. Well, whatever. And the suit I went down and bought from Sears on credit with my credit card. And I think they had 2 pair of pants, and you wouldn't want to get any open flame around it. Yeah, I'm telling you. But I worked in Houston for a couple of years, and I learned the piling business, and went to Dallas and learned the rail business. And I was there for maybe 3 years. And then Jerry Fields, everybody knows who Jerry is, was the vice president of L.B. Foster in the Southwest at the time, asked me if I would move to Seattle. And I was a company man. I'd do whatever they wanted. I said, sure. So I moved to Seattle in 1984.
And that's when you and I started to talk.
It is.
Because I was in Spokane. And when we wanted to talk to L.B. Foster, we talked to the nearest office.
Exactly. And I think you guys on the West Coast, I think, referred to L.B. Foster as the Foster College. Because they did, train and raise a lot of people. Yeah. Yeah,
one of the things that in my last interview, talking to Bobby Cons, we talked about this where, back in the 70s and 80s, it seemed like you came from one of 3 or 4 companies. Gensco.
Yeah.
Valley Steel, and L.B. Foster.
L.B. Foster, right.
The branch is, come from those 3 tree trunks. And L.B. Foster had and still does have a long reach.
And, they do. They're not, not so much in pipe, but when Jerry Fields ran the pipe division for L.B. Foster in Houston, it was a powerhouse. I mean, back when I started, they were billing like $7 million a month. And which was big money back when you were buying steel for $800-900 a ton or $700, whatever the number was. But over the years, Jerry left, and Joe Persh went to Texas Pipe, and Bill Aarons left, and so many of the guys that I thought were real pros, they all left. And part of the reason we were pros working around Jerry is because he had the ability to make things very, very simple. I mean, you didn't sit around and talk. You got in there and worked. And not just a couple of guys, I'm talking about everybody. And I think that's one of the reasons he was successful when he started his own company.
Now, the L.B. Foster Seattle division, how many guys were there? How big was this thing? And did you have a pipe yard or a rail yard? What did you have?
I think we had some rail stored down in Portland. We had no pipe, and we had myself and Dr. Landucci, Fred Varney, a kid named Jerry, and a really nice secretary. I was young then. But only, I think, 4 people, and then we had a couple of people in Portland.
Was Guy Richards and those guys come and gone already?
Guy Richards left right before I got there. Yeah, there was a fellow there named Al Elrod. I took his spot, and Al went next door to sell stock for E.F. Hutton. So I went in there. I didn't know anybody. I've never... I've been all over the world because my father was a pilot in the Air Force, but, I didn't really know the Northwest that well, and nor the people and what they sold. I just, went up there and did the best I could, and we did okay. Yeah, I think that was only there for 1 year. We got the Port of Astoria project, and we got a Bethel, Alaska project, and they were both huge. The Bethel, Alaska job, the pipe came from Japan, and they had to measure the tides because it was really, very shallow. They had only certain types of vessels that could get over there. We had tugs come up to push them over. They discharge everything in 24 hours. The locals wanted the dunnage because, apparently there wasn't a lot of wood to burn there. And it was quite a job. And but I was there for a year. My wife was born in Washington, Fort Lewis, Washington. I think it's Fort Lewis.
Yeah, that's down by Tacoma.
Right. And she went to Seattle pregnant and had the baby and came back. And it kind of reminded me of a salmon, except she didn't flop up on the beach and rot. She just went up there, back upstream, had the baby and came back. But they asked me if I wanted to come back to Houston, and I said, absolutely, because, it's just about what you're used to. There's no place like home. Even if home is flat, muggy, and hot, cockroaches, it's still home.
Right. And so you were only in Seattle 1 year?
1 year.
It seemed like, we forged a friendship, even though it was long distance. Seattle and Spokane. It seemed to me would have said you were there 3 or 4 years, but that's interesting. So when you came back to Houston with L.B. Foster, what capacity? You were a salesman?
I was a salesman. They put me in charge of the coating plants, or the coating plant. And the thing about that, it was just what Jerry Fields was doing was he was in the process of leaving the L.B. Foster, and he felt responsible for putting me up in there, and so he was going to bring me back. And so they made up a job. I was going to be in charge of the Houston Pipe Coating, TGF3 plant. Well, the guy that's been at Houston Pipe Coating, Jimmy Peak's been there for 40 years. I'm going to go out and tell him what to do. Come on, man. But I've gradually started picking up my old customers and selling rail and pipe, and then Jerry Fields left, and they put a guy named Bob Schaefer in charge, who was a great guy, rail guy. Bob Schaefer left, and they said, do you want to be the regional manager? And I said, sure. So it started there, and then, my last days with Foster, we moved facilities. We changed how we were going to quote things. We were supposed to call a guy in Pittsburgh for all the prices. You called me for a price on 10-inch quarter wall. I had to call him and find out. I said, this is not going to work. There's no way that's going to work. So ultimately, the president of the company came to Houston and fired me. And thank you. And, they gave me a nice check, and they let me keep my company car. But, as far as being run off from a job, I would never worry about finding another job, because I don't know about you, and I bet you have. Over the years, I've tried to hire Charles Boatright, and I can't find that guy. Have you tried to hire Randy Hurst?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, nowadays, you're lucky if you can find somebody that knows what 8 o'clock in the morning means. 8 o'clock when I came up was you were there at 7:30. Yeah, so.
No, I understand exactly what you're saying, Charles, and but so now you're on vacation.
No, yeah,
you're in a transition. You're no longer with LB Foster. You got a little severance. Got to keep the company car. You don't have to tell the secretaries what to do. And then what did you do? Did you take a week off? Did you take 2 weeks? Or were you knocking on doors the next?
No. I just took a little time off, and I went over to see Stan Fisher, who quit and went to work with Jerry.
No, we're talking 1986, 7?
Probably so, 86, 87, yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, Jerry, I went over to see Stan Fisher, and he said, hold on a minute. He called Jerry, and I said, and Stan told Jerry, I said, are we going to make him wait any longer? And he said, no, put him on the phone. So Jerry said, can you be there Friday? So I went to work Monday. I went to work for Jerry Fields. And it was, the thing I'll say about Jerry is he was an excellent teacher. He had the ability to take things that were complicated, make them real, real simple. And he says, everything is simple. And it really, if you think about it, things are pretty simple as far as business. Do what you say, when you say, pay your bills on time, and expect to get paid on time. And I've carried that with me from the time that I left him. And, I've tried to practice it, and it worked. But, it was a good job. It was an excellent job.
How many guys were working in the J.D. Fields office at that time in the mid to late 80s?
Well, in Houston, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6. Only 6.
Did he have the West Coast one yet?
When I left, he did. He had Mike Leone, yeah. Good guy.
Yeah. Now, how long did you work with Jerry?
7 years.
Okay.
Yeah. I got to the point where I said I could do this on my own. So I went to my wife and I said, I'm going to go do this on my own. And she said, okay. And I took $75,000 of my kids' college money. I went down here to Sam's and bought 3 4-line phones, rented 650 square feet over there, and went over there and started calling people that I knew and said, I'm in business for myself. Can you help me? And it's amazing. People help you. And I'll tell you, one of the hardest things to do when you start a company is come up with a name. Because I wanted Texas Pipe or Lone Star Steel, but you go through the list and you get down to B&W. So Don and I went over to this leased office, and if we'd get an order, I would call somebody like Sonny Jane. And Sonny Jane told me the first day, whatever you need, you got it, because your word is golden. And I'll never forget that. And another really great, charitable, nice guy, Kevin Beckman, called me up and said, whatever you need, you got it. So that really helped me. And it wasn't just them. Bobby helped me. People help you on both sides. And you, as you well know, that's what happens.
So that was 1994?
That was 2001.
2001?
Yeah.
Okay.
I worked for Jerry for 7 years. That was 2001. And that we started this thing. And I'll tell you, quite frankly, I didn't have about accounting systems. And it was about a year before we hired Mavis, who was my old secretary at Foster. But we just did everything ourselves, trying to keep expenses down. And it just, well, as you well know, it starts off slow, and then you get this and you go, oh, this is a bad month. And all of a sudden you get this huge order and you made a bunch of money. You don't have to share it with anybody. And it just goes along. And then all of a sudden, you're going to work at a real company. And that's basically the way we developed. I will say this. I have never paid an invoice late unless I didn't get it. Now, I would call somebody and ask them, can I have another 10 days? But how many people ever call you and ask for another 10 days? Never. So you stand out. If you pay your bills, because the guy at the other end, especially if he's the owner, that's what he's concerned about, is his money. So, I just did it a little at a time, one step. I went to work frightened to death. I'm talking about when you go in the first week or so, you're on that phone and whatever that guy wants to hear. And, I guess they hear the desperation. But I only had one way for it to go, because I left something really good to this. And I have no regrets. It'll be 20 years next year, and it's great.
Yeah, that's such an awesome story. Man, I love it. Now, let me ask you this. How have you seen the pipe business change in what you've been at it, 45 years, 47?
43 or 44.
44, somewhere in there. Obviously, we've seen a lot of change happen, in regards to technology and
well, sure,
those kinds of things. But, what are the things that you see that, that's really so much different today than it used to be?
Well, we have email. Back in the day, you had to know how to use a dictaphone. This will be a letter to John Smith, just Smith, and I'd like to quote the file. You learn how to do that. And when somebody said, I talked to John, they really talked to him. They didn't send him. Well, now when you talk to somebody is you send them an email and they sent you an email back. That's talking. And just the ability to keep up with what you have in inventory, who quoted what. It's just, I want to say things are easier, but I'm not so sure about that.
Yeah.
Randy, back in the day, somebody would call up and give you a $300,000 order and you'd write it up. There would be no paper. Eventually you got a purchase order, but in the mail. But it was just a different kind of deal there.
Who would you consider, some of your mentors or a mentor?
Jerry Fields helped me sort everything out in my mind as far as how you should do things. Again, very simple. Bobby Cons has been a big help. I remember the first time somebody didn't pay me and I had to sue them. And the question, do they have any money? Not really, but I'm going to sue them. He said, you're going to get a judgment. And if you want a judgment, you can come over here and I'll give you one of mine. And I wish I'd have done that because I got nothing. But I learned about the process. So Bobby's been a big help to me. Just different people, but those two people stand out. And I'll tell you, my wife and she's always backed me up.
It's nice to have that partner.
It is. But on the other hand, I never brought any problems home. She wasn't stressed out with what I go through during the day.
Can you look back and remember a toughest point in your career? Whether it be something with the market or, maybe starting PW, like you say, that first week. Was there something defining out there that really stands out in your mind or memory as, man, that was a tough go?
There was a couple. When I first started, I got sued. And I didn't have any money, and it cost me $35,000 to defend myself. And that was pretty trying because you just don't know what to expect in a lawsuit. But I was being sued for breach of loyalty. What the hell is that? And what that did was really gave me a good education. And the other time was 2015 or 16 when everything tanked, prices tanked.
15 and into 16.
15, and I had some pipe on consignment from the Japanese. And here's this pipe, I was way upside down in that. And here's the deal. I could have paid them, but I wouldn't have any money left to run this business. And that I would end up with a bunch of overpriced steel. So that's the only thing time I can think of in my career. I really kind of acted like I don't want to say a chicken shit, but it was a little bit chicken shit. But I called them up and I said, you guys need to come out here. Let's talk. And we worked out a payment plan. They cut the price. But that was, frightening.
Right, yeah. And that's just a few years back.
Yeah.
Yeah, and but I remember it very well. 2016 was our worst year ever. When you're having those challenges, what keeps you going? What gives you that drive?
Well, I mean, you're always looking for another order, or your people are looking for another order. But again, if it's a problem, the answer is pretty simple. What is it I need to do? Not 6 things, there's 1 thing, or 2 maybe. And you just do those 1 or 2 things. And by calling the Japanese and talking to them, I've found in life the things that not knowing is a frightening thing. But when you finally come to the end, it's not nearly as frightening as you think. I mean, you're wondering, what was I even frightened about? But that just never changes. It's always going to be like that.
Sure. No, I totally understand. If a young person was thinking about coming into the steel pipe business, what advice would you give them? What's the secrets to success in this business?
Well, if you were going to come into the business, hopefully you would come in with some experience and you would have some place to go and beg. You got to have some places to go beg for an order. I mean, you can't come in knowing nothing about steel pipe. I think you'd have a problem with that. That's my personal opinion. But the opportunity is certainly available to anybody. When you started your company, didn't you have like 6 or 7 or 8, 9 people that this guy's going to try to help me? It sure does help with that. You need to start with that.
Right.
But the opportunity is available for anybody that wants to do it. And then you have to work like a dog.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about NASPD.
Yes.
What are your earlier memories about NASPD? Like, do you remember the first time you went to a convention?
But the first time I went was to Las Vegas, and you stayed at what's the Fountain Hotel? Bellagio. Well, I signed up too late, so I stayed across the street in the Bin Laden, and which is okay. That was, and I'm not a big Las Vegas fan, but that was my first one. I had a really good time in San Francisco. I had a good time in Boston and Charleston. But the first one I went to was in Las Vegas. But I understand that NASPD has a new recent president, who's doing a great job. Any truth to that rumor?
That's up to opinion and conjecture, I think.
Well, certainly I couldn't think of anybody that deserved it more.
Well, I don't know the deserving part, but no, I appreciate it.
Well, you put in your time, man.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So, what favorite NASPD conventions? Anything stick out? Any unique moments?
I can't think of any particularly. The thing for NASPD for me is I get to go and talk to people that did exactly what I did. I get to meet with people that have actually done that, and I can sit there and talk to Bill Buckland, and we have very, very similar problems, and nobody to bail us out. And I know you're got to be in the same place, but it's just I like to visit with those people. It's always fun.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Well, we love having you in the NASPD, and we hope you continue to come, because I always enjoy those the networking, as they call it, the fancy word for sitting around having cocktails,
right,
and BSing.
Right.
That's my favorite.
Yeah, and there's some just really just nice people.
Yeah, that's great. Let me ask you something a little bit different. As we're getting close to winding down the interview, besides the steel pipe business, besides your career in the pipe business, something else that maybe you're most proud of. Some people talk about their grandkids or their kids or the favorite charity that they work with, or even a hobby, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't, I have grandkids and I love them. But over the years, I've always believed in real estate in Texas. So in this part of Old Katy, it's all zone commercial, but there's houses on it. So I started buying these houses about 12 years ago for like $85,000, $90,000. And then when I had some money in a good year, I bought a place on the coast, and then I bought a place in the hill country. So these little places that I bought around here just because I thought it would be a good investment, everything at this point is paid for. And so it make a good living from that. I love to go to my places in the country and mow or whatever, mow and drink vodka. And I'm proud of that side accomplishment while doing this. And I love my wife and kids, of course. Sure. I've had the same wife for 43 years.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing. Well, I'm going to close this down. So before I do that, is there anything I forgot to ask you? Anything that you may have wrote down on your list? Anything you want to share?
I was gonna give you the meaning of life, but it's just too long and convoluted, so I'm going to pass on that. But no,
it's the end of the day too.
Yeah, I can't think of anything else. I appreciate being included in your repertoire of pipe guys.
Absolutely. I'm going to get this story.
Well, it's not that exciting, but I appreciate you including me.
Yeah, you're most welcome.
Yes.
All right, my friend. Thank you very much, Charles.
Oh, no, thank you, Randy.
All right.
Thank you very much.